Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Connecting the Dots, a podcast series hosted by me, Neil Robertson. It feels like an absolute age since I did one of these, but I'm back. I'm raring to go, and I've got a brilliant guest on this comeback episode. It is the one, the only, the email writer supreme himself, Mr. Collin Lavigne, joining me all the way from Massachusetts. How are we, sir?
I'm doing well, man. It's early, but I got my coffee and I'm
You and
ready
your
to go.
coffee, always important. I've known Collin for just over a year now. We've worked together on a number of projects. He lives in possibly the nicest part of America, so I am pretty jealous. But then again, the fish and chips over there is probably rubbish compared to over here. So, every cloud. So let's jump right in. So the title of this podcast is The Psychology of Writing and Communication. So, Collin, as I always do on these podcasts, and I know because you've seen a few of them, I'm going to start with a tell me about yourself question, but it's not strictly a tell me about yourself question because this is not a job interview. But for the benefits of the viewers, what's your journey been like from when you were knee high to grasshopper up until the present day?
So we can start from when I went to university. I wanted to become a psychologist. I found people interacting with people, listening to people, and social dynamics to be very interesting.
Yeah.
So I studied that. I studied neuroscience, philosophy. And then at the end of my fourth year, I realized I don't want to accrue $250,000 in debt. So let me try something else. So I began writing online using what I learned from school, from reading, from my daily interactions in my writing, and I expanded from there.
Amazing. Yeah, I feel like not wanting to get into $250,000 of debt is a pretty prudent choice to make at a young age. I mean, how did you find it? So, I mean, what was that like for you? What was that whole experience like?
So when I graduated, I had a lot of newfound time. I was
Yeah,
working a full-time job, but it was at that time it was pretty laid back, relaxed. I had been there for about a year and a half,
yeah,
and I wanted to start learning more. I wanted
mm,
to start doing more with my time.
mhm.
So, like any idiot 22-year-old, you look up cool ways to make money online, fast ways to do this, quickest ways to do this. And I did that for a few months. But then I realized that in pursuing something that wouldn't have truly fulfilled me, I would have surely given up within a few months.
Yeah.
So I leaned into writing and applied my knowledge from what I learned in school and everyday interactions over the course of a few years in working in the mental health field to writing online.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing when I think of your background because you are so well placed to talk about this in that you have a degree in psychology, you've worked in the mental health field for a number of years now, and I think I think it's a really fascinating connection that you have really between writing and psychology. I mean, what on that point, what did you enjoy the most about studying psychology?
What I enjoyed the most was seeing how the theories evolved over the years.
Yeah,
So the school of psychology really became a field of study in the late 19th century. And at
yeah,
that time, we didn't have the tools that we have now. So a lot of it was just simply abstractions from the minds of great people and
yeah.
observing how people with different ailments go about their life,
Hmm.
and their writings have lived on and evolved into these, well, some of them are funny theories looking back, but now we have what we have because of what these very intelligent people did.
Hmm.
So that to me was the most enjoyable.
Are there any people or theories that really inspired you early on and that you've kind of taken with you in your foray into writing?
There are none in particular. I know that's not exactly the answer you would like,
Oh,
but
that's fine, yeah, yeah, or
it's
any kind of
a holistic culmination of different theories having to do with the unconscious, why we make decisions, communication, all the way to things like body language and tonality and persuasion. A culmination of them, to me, has been impactful to learn about, especially when writing online, because everything applies, whether we are conscious of it or not. It all
yeah.
matters.
Yeah, and we're going to come on to talk about that in more detail later on. But I'm interested to know, how do you feel that your background in psychology, both from an educational and professional standpoint, how do you feel that your background influences your approach to copywriting and communication?
I think it influences my approach because having worked in the field for 4 years and having studied the field of psychology for a few years before then, the main thing I've learned is patience. There's a
Yeah,
lot to learn. And when working with people within this field, you need to have a lot of patience. And as a writer, things won't just come like that.
yeah,
There will be days when no ideas are flowing. You wake up with brain fog, no motivation, and you simply don't want to do it.
mm,
Additionally, we live in a world where everybody wants things very quickly. However, nothing very meaningful comes overnight.
mm.
Patience truly is a virtue, and that's one of the things that I learned and regularly remind myself and apply as a writer.
You've talked a lot about that in your emails and social media posts, where you've said, there are just going to be days where you don't want to do it as much. We're all human, and there are going to be days where we have that motivation and ideas flow out of our head, left, right, and center. But some days you're really struggling. But I think you've always said, write what's in your heart, what's in your heart and in your head. But you just have to like push through that. You don't have to climb over the wall so much. You have to just fucking run through it. Like, is that something that you found from your experience?
It's certainly important to plan things out, but there are days when the best course of action is just to write,
Yeah.
to not sit back and wait for the perfect idea to come out, or not sit back and formulate this strategic outline that you think will be very effective.
Mm.
When things come to mind on a day where things aren't coming to mind, go
Mm.
with it.
Yeah.
Just make it work.
I mean, because sometimes you can come up with an idea that's like it's a seed, right? But then eventually, if you keep at it, like I've put out posts before on LinkedIn, or I've written articles before that I'm not even that happy with, but then either they'll get loads of engagement or the client will really love it. Because I guess like I start with the seed of an idea and then it grows and grows. I don't want to be too cliche, but it kind of grows into a tree. Um, and I guess sometimes, even if you don't think it's a great idea, you can never know. I guess you've got to look at it two ways. You've got to look at the psychology of you, the writer, but also the psychology of the reader as well. Like, you don't know what they're looking for necessarily, or what they might like or not like. And sometimes we can really overthink that.
Absolutely. And we have tens of thousands of thoughts every day, but the most impactful ideas stick. And every impactful idea can be branched off into another. You said it can sprout into this large tree with many different branches of ideas.
Yeah.
And to your second point, with us not knowing if what we write will resonate, it's because for the most part, we're in our own heads.
Yeah.
Before writing anything, if we take some time to truly visualize what the other person is experiencing, how they feel, what they believe in, their experiences, then the copy we write can be much more, it can have much more of an impact on them
Mhm.
than it is if we don't do that.
I mean, research is obviously a big part of that. So if you're trying to get into the mind of your reader, it really helps to have an idea. Okay, I'm talking to a 24-year-old guy in Massachusetts who, works as a writer and also has a background in the healthcare industry. Like, if you have that very clear picture of somebody in your head, I guess it makes it a lot easier to understand and empathize with them. And listen, there's been times in my professional career where I've started writing a LinkedIn post or an email or a blog post or a landing page, and I kind of thought, well, I don't know 100% who the audience is for this. And it's like, if you can know that as much as possible before diving in, I think that's so important. Because, like, you know, how can you understand somebody's psychology if you don't know who that somebody is?
That's true. And personal demographics are certainly important to know about. However, I found that trying to dig a little bit deeper is even more impactful at times. How do they feel before they read my copy? The problem they're facing, how painful is it? What do they want to do? What are they willing to do to overcome this problem? What are their core desires? Things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of people neglect to even do that kind of research before writing a single line of copy.
Yeah.
And that's why so many posts, whether that be on social media or blog posts or videos, flop.
Yeah. And you were great with that. You know, when we worked on my LinkedIn content last year, you know, you were very clear with me, right? Who specifically do you want to target? Because I gave you about 4 or 5 individuals that I really wanted to target through my copy, and eventually I settled on writers. We targeted a lot of writers in my copy, but actually the funny thing was that through targeting other writers with top tips content, I managed to get some leads and some work through that, because people were like, well, you clearly know what you're talking about. So sometimes, you know, your work can have unintended consequences, but they can be good consequences. It's just that, you know, if you can really get clear about who you're targeting, and obviously we spoke last night about this training course that I'm eventually going to offer to other copywriters. But, you know, I feel that I've done quite a lot of work in nurturing them for 12 to 18 months, because it's been so clear in most of my posts that that's who I'm targeting. So I really like what you said there. And I think you have answered this next question that I've got written down. But let's see if there's anything else you want to say on it. So, what specific psychological principles do you find to be the most effective in engaging your readers through the email and social media content that you put out?
Yes. To me, the most impactful psychological principles for engaging readers in social media or emails, or even on landing pages or videos like this. Principles like urgency, curiosity, scarcity, negative emotion I found to be very effective, because people don't like dealing with problems that they're facing. And if you can mention a problem and truly amplify it to the point where there is an emotional response, there's a negative emotion elicited, then they're much more likely to sign up for whatever it is you're promoting. So those, and I would have to say personalization, especially in today's day and age where AI content is in abundance. Anybody can load up ChatGPT and it can pump out thousands of pieces of content within a few minutes. So these days, people need to see the authenticity, the transparency, and the personalization within your content. To me, that is the most impactful psychological principle, if you'd like to call it that, especially these days with AI.
Yeah. AI is a friend, not a foe. I've said that for a long time, and I truly believe that. I think it's getting to a point now where, listen, as copywriters, we either have to adapt to AI or we get left behind. It's that simple. But I think that you can feed all of those things into AI. So you talked about negative emotion, you know, empathy on the flip side of that. But, you know, like, the clearer your prompts are, obviously AI can act as a semi-human, although it can never be a human and it can never have that human psychology. I still think there's a lot to be said for that. I've done it with my copy where I've said, I want to convey an X sentiment. So I have said that before. I've said, please start by highlighting the common pain points this audience will face. And I want it to sound like this. So I want it to sound, you use the word urgency. I want it to sound urgent. I want it to sound immediate. And obviously, I can do all that to a point. Otherwise, what am I doing as a professional writer, right? Like, I obviously need to know this stuff to a point, but sometimes it's just useful to get that secondary perspective, even if it is from a machine. I mean, actually, one thing I do want to ask, and I didn't have this written down. It was just following on from something you said there. When it comes to the urgency and the negative emotion side of copywriting, what are some of the examples or frameworks that you found most effective? So, like it could even just be some example sentences that you've written in the past or themes you've touched on when it comes to negative emotion and this whole kind of pain, agitate, solution framework that we've talked about before. What are some things that you have found to be really effective in convincing people to sign up or take a positive action?
An important element, if you'd like to evoke negative emotion, is highlighting the potential positive future.
Yeah.
There needs to be some polarity there, because if you start a post or an email or a blog with something negative, it could be a pain point at the top, you amplify it all the way down. If you continue doing that, then your reader will feel terrible.
Yeah.
And you don't want them to feel completely terrible without giving them some sense of hope.
Love that. Yeah.
So I would say the best framework is to get them to their breaking point. And right when they're at the point where they're getting either really annoyed with you that you keep amplifying the issues that they're dealing with, or B, they're about to click off because they think you're being entirely negative, then provide them with a one-liner. Something along the lines of, but what if this wasn't true? Or what if you could, and then whatever the big desirable outcome is.
Yeah. Or what if you're wrong?
Something
I like that as an example. What if you're wrong? That's something I put sometimes.
that's
Just
great
flipping.
for if you're amplifying their negative belief systems.
Yeah.
Because a lot of negative emotions come from our self-limiting beliefs. What we believe to be true, even if it's not truly objectively true.
Mm-hmm. I like that because it's kind of like, and your audio is fine, by the way, just for clarity, people won't know this, but we had a few audio issues at the start with Collin and I, but I'm now not getting any feedback, so it's nice and calm. It sounds great, and you delivered it so articulately, so it's great. But yeah, I think that what I like in what you said there is that you're almost painting a picture where you don't necessarily have to do pain, agitate, solution, although that is what we're talking about. You could have pain, but a little bit of a solution as well. So you're actually painting a vision kind of early on, because you want to piss people off a little bit, but you don't want to piss them off so much that all they're reading is a sea of problems, right? So it's like, it's kind of like the framework, but flipped on its head a little bit. It's kind of like pain's a little bit of a solution, then more agitation, a hint of a solution, then more agitation, and then finally a big load of solutions is what I would take from that.
Absolutely. And sometimes there's even power in withholding the solution. Instead of mentioning the solution within a piece of content, you say, hey, if you'd like to find out the answers, you're going to have to sign up for my email list, or grab the mini course I've linked in the description. Something along those lines. If you've done it properly, people will opt in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in terms of the creative process, I'm really curious on this because I don't think I've ever actually asked you this, even though we've worked together. I've never really found this out. What does your creative process look like? So, do you have a set structure for, when you're creating a new piece of content from the initial idea to the final product? And if so, could you share it with me?
It is context dependent, but you're okay with that. We can start at the simplest and then work our way up.
Yeah.
So for LinkedIn posts, I like to take what's worked before. Not necessarily the content itself, but the framing, elements of the headline, take into account the emotions that were evoked within that piece of content, and give it a little remix. Sometimes I'll copy and paste a post into another doc and just tweak a little bit from there, but very rarely do I do that. When it comes to emails, I have some frameworks to follow, not line for line frameworks, but I like to break it down where I will start with a big problem that either I experienced or that my reader is experiencing. And then from there, we talk about the consequences of not addressing that problem.
Yeah.
Or reasons why they should solve that problem. And then after that, we'll have a big picture understanding. It's all situation dependent on what I talked about in the second portion of the email. And then at the end, it's either action steps or a call to action saying, hey, check out this video or check out this product. Again, context dependent. And then for things such as courses or putting together scripts for videos, it does take some planning. Mostly outlining the frame of whatever it is I'm writing, because it all starts with writing. I like to call it setting the page. So instead of staring at a blank page, I'll mention what I would like to talk about in the intro, in the body, in the summary, in the conclusion, all before actually writing. And in terms of mental models of how to get my creative process going, I suppose I do the stereotypical self-help guru routine. I do. I wake up 5:15, go for a walk, take a cold shower, drink some coffee. As corny as it may sound for some people, it has been great for me for keeping a clear mind in the morning and allowing me to have enough energy, focus, and minimal distractions in the morning to get these things done.
Yeah.
So by the time 9:30, 10 o'clock rolls around, I can sit here and say, I have done more in these first 3 to 4 hours of my day than many people will do throughout their entire day. And to me, that is fulfilling.
You took a social media detox.
That's about it.
Did you not say you took a social media detox recently as well? You said you spent a whole week without it and you didn't have your phone. Was that right?
I spent, about a week with minimal technology at all, aside from, heat, taking a shower, whatnot. But I didn't check my emails. I didn't check social media. That ended up turning into a 2-week break.
Wow.
Most of my time was dedicated to reading books, going for walks, and just free journaling on a notepad.
Yeah.
It was great. One of those things that I truly believe everybody could use in today's day and age.
Yeah. It's like, because you're so switched on to everything. I leave my phone charging downstairs now when I go to sleep because, I can be so switched on to everything, but so switched off at the same time. For example, I can wake up in the morning, still be in bed, check all my emails, check my LinkedIn posts, check my WhatsApps. But am I really switched on because I'm then staring at that for an hour, going through everything? I haven't got out of bed. I haven't done anything and I'm not feeling present. And I do think that's impacted on my creative output at times. This was actually a question that I had written a bit later on, but I'm just going to jump right into it because I feel like it's, it segues so well from what you were just saying there. Like you've said on a LinkedIn post the other day, I found it really interesting. Detach from the constant buzz of your messages, emails, and social media every single day. That's how true clarity emerges. As I said before, we have to talk about the psychology of the writer as well as the psychology of writing because the two tie in together, right? So you've used the phrase holistic self-improvement when we spoke yesterday. So can you talk to me in a bit more detail about this and what writers can do to gain more mental clarity and thus improve the clarity of their output? Following on from what you just said there.
We are constantly bombarded with so much content that it is damn near impossible to make sense of all of it. With all of this input, people nowadays have a general understanding of a variety of topics. However, nobody has a deep understanding on a few specific topics. And this is problematic, especially for writers, because there are certain subjects that we must spend our time learning about and becoming proficient in if we want our writing to be of high quality. And a big reason for this is because social media is becoming more competitive. More people are logging on, more people are creating content. And if you want to truly stand out, then you need to treat your mind like a sanctuary, not like a garbage disposal.
Yeah, I like that.
This is the harsh reality of it. It's always a constant buzz of what's going on my phone. Who's emailing me? Who's texting me? What did this person post? It's great that we have this sense of connectedness, but to truly gain this mental clarity, you need to detach. Put constraints on your use. As a writer, ask yourself, what type of content do I want to consume, which will help me? What type of content do I currently consume that is not helping me?
Yeah.
How much time am I spending on consuming that type of destructive content every single day? Most people can say it's 3, 4, maybe even 5 hours.
Yeah.
Think of what you can be doing with that time and think of how much better, think of how much more effectively your brain could work if you weren't flooding it, allowing that trash to enter it on a daily basis. Once you gain that clarity and you have put constraints on your input, then the quality of your output will inevitably improve.
I think as well, if we're going to talk about LinkedIn, you have to be very careful who you follow, because even me, like I'm 33 years old and I properly started using LinkedIn at about 31, 32 when I first went self-employed. And I was finding myself being hooked in by people selling false promises. I think you might have alluded to this at the start of the episode, but big lofty promises about where you can get to and be a 7-figure hustle bro and all this kind of stuff. And if that was killing my brain at the age of 31, 32, imagine what it would do to somebody who was just starting out at, say, 20, 21. I think you actually said this. So you're very autobiographical in your content, which I love. When you send out emails and you put out posts saying, I made this mistake, don't make the same mistake as me. But I can't remember if you said this to me directly or if I read it in one of your posts, but you basically said that when you were about 19, 20, that was you. You were consuming a lot of information and possibly a lot of bad information and a lot of content that was not conducive to developing your creativity as an individual or developing your curiosity. So, I mean, do you want to talk a bit more about that and some of the experiences you had at that stage in your life?
Sure. So I've always gone through school rather easily. I never studied. I never read outside of school. I never wrote outside of school. I breezed through. And I don't say that to say, hey, look how smart I am. I say that to provide some context, because when I got out of high school, I went to university, not because that's what I wanted to do, but because I didn't know anything else to do. And when I was there, all those bad habits that I had before of my 9 hours of screen time on my phone, yes, 9 hours of social media use, it continued.
Yeah.
Now, I still went through university, A's, B's, did very well. But in addition to that, I was partying a lot.
Yeah.
I was doing a bunch of things I should not have been doing. And then I woke up one day and I came to a realization that I was essentially in the same place as what I was a few years back,
Yeah.
just in a different location. And from there, I acknowledge the fact that I need to do things that I haven't necessarily been doing. Reading, writing, having some form of creative output, because all of this input was polluting my mind. When you have so much input without the output, you become anxious, you become stressed, you even deal with additional mental health challenges. And these days, a lot of people, most people, if we're being frank, experience this. Has a lot to do with what they allow into their brain. And it also has to do with the fact that they lack these side hobbies. This is a very roundabout way of getting to your main question, but
No,
it comes to something like holistic self-improvement. It's mind, body, spirit. You need to have something that interests you, that you learn about, something that you create.
Yeah.
You need to have a way of physically exerting your body, lifting weights, going for runs, climbing rocks, rowing boats, whatever it is. And spirit, that only develops after the first two have been developed. So you can sit there cross-legged for 10 minutes every day and pretend to meditate, but it's not going to work. If mentally you're not doing things to improve your life, and physically you are not doing things to improve your life. So it's a multifaceted, very lengthy process. But once you come to terms with the fact that changes need to be made in the fundamental aspects of your life, then things tend to fall into place.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, from my perspective, a lot of that resonates with me, because when I set up my business, I was in the front room of my house 5 days a week. And my screen time wasn't quite 9 hours, but it was still pretty bad. And I just thought, I could keep going. It's a bit like when you were saying at university, you were getting A's and B's, you were doing really well. Like, I still felt like my output was okay, but I just felt like I was sleepwalking a little bit. And I thought, well, I want to grow, right? Every individual should want to grow in some way, however that looks for them. And I didn't feel like I was. So I then started going to the gym a little bit more, doing more running, especially. I got therapy, started getting therapy 2 years ago. I now go to a networking group. Honestly, all this stuff makes a difference. And you build a certain level of resilience. Like, it's that age-old thing they always used to say to me at school: when you're studying for an exam, go for a run the night before. But it really does help. Like, I used to turn my nose up at it and laugh, but the endorphins you get from even just stepping outside for an hour or getting to know somebody. Like, one of the biggest benefits of our relationship was not even necessarily the work that you did for me or the work I did for you. It was learning a different perspective and just hearing from somebody else. Like, sometimes if you're on your phone all day, you're only ever listening to your mind, and that can be a dangerous thing. That can be a really dangerous thing if you are just listening to your own thoughts and interpretations without getting a secondary or a load of other perspectives. So that's been the biggest thing for me, is that since I've gone freelance, I feel like I've woken up. It's like, to quote Kevin Spacey in American Beauty, I know that's a bit of an unfortunate reference nowadays, but I feel like I've been in a coma for most of my life and I'm just waking up. Like, that was my typical.
And think about this, Neil. You're in your 30s. How about kids who are 12, 13, 14, and they've grown up with this?
Yeah.
What will their life look like when they're your age, when they're my age? This is
scary.
These are things that aren't talked about enough, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So hopefully conversations like this can shed light on some of the issues with overconsumption of media and the lack of limited creative problem solving that we have in today's day and age.
I think if anyone watching this has a 12 or 13-year-old kid, please show them this. I don't think I'll have any 12 or 13-year-old direct viewers. Well, hopefully I don't, especially with some of the language that I come out with on these podcasts. But you're right. It's like, so I studied English at university and I read a lot at university. Since then, I haven't been reading as much. But I'm not going to say get away with it, because I don't want it to sound like that. But I guess because I read so much up until my mid-20s, I had that crystallized intelligence, where like I was absorbing everything. And I sometimes do feel a little bit like I'm on autopilot, learning all the things, rehashing all the things that I learned when I was a teenager. Having said that, I still want to learn more. And I would say between the age of about 25 and 30, I was kind of like, I don't need to learn anything more. This is me for life now. And in the last few years, I've started like learning way more than I did in the previous 5 or 6 years, and learning from different types of people as well, people of all ages, people from different parts of the world, because we all have a story and we can all teach each other something. So that's massive for me. Like, I mean, you talk to people all over the world too. I mean, you have clients all over the world, right?
Just in America currently, but I have had clients from other countries.
Yeah, and you've learned a lot from those people.
Certainly. Worldviews, perspectives on things.
Yeah.
It's great just to listen. After all, we were born with 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't always fulfill that, but yeah, I know what you mean. I'm trying to do more listening and less speaking, but I think we've covered so much ground. I'm just trying to think of what else we haven't covered. So empathy, I know, is a big thing for you. We may have covered this already, but I guess we could go back over it and see if there's anything else that you want to add. I mean, how important is empathy and emotional intelligence in writing copy that resonates with diverse audiences? And tied in with that, how can writers demonstrate emotional intelligence?
Empathy in writing is incredibly important for writers, because if you cannot visualize what it is your readers are experiencing, then your copy will miss the mark. You can be the best storyteller, you can have the best grammar, the best punctuation, but if you lack emotional intelligence and the empathy, foresight of how your copy will resonate or miss the mark before you even begin, then it's going to flop. It's inevitable that will happen. And if there are writers who would like to develop their ability to empathize with their readers when writing copy, the best place to start is in everyday conversations. Outside of writing, talk with people you pass on the road, talk with your family members. Gauge their body language, gauge their tonality, gauge how you think they feel in a given moment when talking to you about a specific thing that happened in their life. Follow-up questions. Those are great, because when you ask follow-up questions with people that you care about in conversations in everyday life, it shows that you are actively listening. When you listen actively, then you can get into their mind. You can direct a conversation. Once you develop that ability, naturally, you can understand their emotions even deeper.
Yeah.
And in doing so, this translates to your experience as a writer. So, analyze other people, ask follow-up questions, and actively listen to them in everyday conversations. Away from the laptop, away from the monitor. Get out there, see conversations.
It's amazing how powerful the open-ended question can be. And I've started asking more open-ended questions in my day-to-day life. So I started out as a journalist, and that was one of the hallmarks of my job, was to kind of ask open-ended questions. What is it you're feeling, or why are you feeling that way, or how, what, why, how, the usual stuff. But what I've started doing is incorporating those questions into my everyday life. And my friends sometimes probably think, why are you fucking asking me so many questions? But I just get to know people so intimately that I do think it helps me as a writer as well. So, for example, if I'm asking my friends open-ended questions, and I'm asking my family, because I want to get to know my parents while they're still alive. That's the one big thing my therapist always tells me, is get to know the people around you while you still can. I find that when I'm asking those open-ended questions in everyday life, I'm also asking them in my copy, and also it's kind of part of the process for me. So if I have a clarity call with somebody for their website, which I more often than not do, if I'm doing like a landing page project or I'm signing them up on a retainer, I find that I'm asking them a lot more open-ended questions. in the past, I used to ask questions that lent themselves to yes or no answers. I never really found out much about the person from doing that. But yeah, I just thought that what you said there resonated with me so much, because you're basically saying, ask open-ended questions, dig deeper. Like, for example, this is a good example, actually. I had about 6 or 7 questions written down before this podcast, but I've probably asked you about 15. There's like follow-up questions. Be fluid, be reactive. I know reactive has negative connotations, but actually in this context, it's good to be reactive. To kind of stay on the straight and narrow. So yeah, I really liked what you said there, and I think that I'd share as well.
Yes, and people naturally, whether we are aware of it or not, we enjoy and we look forward to sharing more about ourselves.
Yeah, we do.
This is an aspect of human nature. We do.
Yeah.
And when you consciously ask people open-ended questions, which lead them to discussing more about themselves, they will go on and on and on. And this is great because it provides you with an insight into how they operate, how they think, what they feel about a given situation. You can learn more about their perspectives, what gets them to tick, little things like this, what gets them to act. And when you're working with a prospective client, or when you're working with a client on retainer, the more you can do this, the better the copy you write for them will be.
Yeah, exactly. And I always say to people, listen, when you start working with me, there may be days where I annoy you because I'm asking a lot of questions. And actually, I don't know about you, but when I was growing up and when I was in the world of work, asking questions was frowned upon somewhat. It was almost like if you ask a question, it's a sign of weakness that you don't understand something. I actually got told in one HR review at an old job that I asked too many questions. And I'm thinking, but isn't that a good thing? I would always encourage people to ask questions. To me, and I really mean this, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I mean, I really believe that. There may be some questions where I kind of feel like it's a bit more of an inane question than some others, but it's never a stupid question, because if the person doesn't either know that information or understand that information, then it's on you then to have that clarity with them and make them understand and help them understand. So, I think asking questions has been encouraged a lot more in the last 5 or 10 years, especially with LinkedIn and the way that that's transformed as well. People are naturally more inquisitive. It's not this, I don't know if you might be too young to remember this, but like 10 years ago, it was a really dry platform. It was really sort of top line. We went to this event today, really formulaic. Whereas now people ask questions of each other, and that's so important. So like, I really want to go back in time and say, fuck you to those people, because they would say to me, oh, you ask too many questions. It's like, I'm trying to do the best job I can. That is why I'm asking questions. And I think everybody needs that quality. Anyone who's going to be a good writer or a good creative person or a good problem solver needs to be able to ask questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned before there is no such thing as a stupid question. To me, what is most stupid is being afraid to ask the question.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I couldn't have put that better. I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, on that point, when we talk about people who are naturally inquisitive and who pose the right kinds of questions and really make you think, who have you taken the most inspiration from, be that on LinkedIn or any kind of marketing industry figures or any authors you like? Who are your biggest inspirations?
With inspirations, I think of people who have taken up the most mental real estate in my mind. And on platforms like LinkedIn or TikTok or Instagram, or Twitter or X, it's tough to determine because it might take you 20 seconds to read a post, 10 seconds to watch a post. To me, the people who have the potential to inspire the most are authors or podcasters, because you get to understand the inner workings of their mind and their thought processes through long form books and podcasts, conversations like these. To me, a few people who have truly stood out and influenced me are Robert Greene in the aspect of understanding human nature, social dynamics. I would also add Carl Jung, brilliant psychiatrist that I studied a lot in university. Those two are the most impactful. There are plenty of others, but at this time, those are the two that are coming to mind because I've read the most of their books. I've listened to their lectures, and a lot of their ideas have been brewing in my mind for years now and have led me to where I am right now.
Fantastic. Collin, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I really enjoyed that conversation. You know, the best podcasts are where I just feel like I'm having a conversation with a friend. And I said this to you yesterday in the prep for this. Sometimes you can forget that you're even recording and you just go off on tangents. But you know, that can be really great and the viewers love it. So it's awesome. So thank you so much for jumping on and giving your insights. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you or ask any other questions?
Well, firstly, absolutely, this was a great time. Thank you for having me. It really was just a conversation. That's the best part about it.
Yeah.
In terms of finding me, I am primarily on LinkedIn. You search up my name, Collin Lavigne. I have a free course on how to build your email list because building an email list is incredibly impactful. And any writer, creator who's looking to make this brand building thing turn into a flourishing business needs an email list. So I have that. Soon I will be creating some YouTube videos as well. That is not public knowledge at this time, but it is now.
It is now, yeah.
It is now. And we'll be exploring topics having to do with writing, marketing, psychology, mental health, overall well-being, and as I said before, holistic self-improvement. So that's where you can find me, primarily on LinkedIn.
And one last question, actually, while I've got it in my head. How are the Boston Celtics doing? Because you're a big Boston Celtics fan. Is the NBA season on right now? I'm not.
Yes. Yeah, so the Celtics are doing well. I'm not sure if this will be a championship year because they have a tendency to lose to teams that they should not be losing to. But they have a great record. They're at the top of the Eastern Conference, and I'm confident. So
when they win
playoffs begin in about a month.
When they win the NBA for the first time in 16 years, we'll come back on and we'll do a celebration podcast all about that.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, Collin.
All right, Neil. Thank you.